Hello and welcome to another 5-minute level 3 video. In this session we're going to be talking about sheet stability. So we're talking about dimensional stability. So dimensional stability and curl and cockle are three problems that we associate with, usually with moisture amongst most of the other things. So it's generally about moisture gain or moisture loss. If we go back to thinking about an individual fibre will have a certain dimension like that. If we put it in a humid atmosphere, it will pick up moisture and it will swell. So it will become fatter, but it will stay the same length. If we put it in an atmosphere that's drier than normal, then moisture will be taken out of the fibre and the fibre will shrink. So if fibres are expanding or contracting depending on the moisture content, then the sheet that they form will also expand or contract. If we know the humidity of what our customer's environment is, one of the things that we can do to help them is to actually condition our sheet. In other words, we can adjust the moisture content of our sheet to be the same as the moisture in the air at the destination. And that way they can open the package and use it immediately, rather than opening it and then having to wait for a few days until the moisture in the sheet has equilibrated with the moisture in the surrounding atmosphere. So other than dimensional stability, we also need to look at curl and cockle. We'll look at cockle first of all. Cockle is a sort of three-dimensional undulating structure that we get to the sheet that we see sometimes. It can be caused through internal stresses within the sheet, and that could be related to drying problems, or it could be related to basis weight problems. If you've got poor formation, areas where you've got a lot of fibre will shrink and expand a lot. Areas where you've got a little fibre will shrink and expand little. And if adjacent areas are shrinking and expanding at different rates, then you'll get cockle. So what are the drying problems? We've already mentioned this when we talked about drying in an earlier video. Depending on how you dry, how you set up your drying system, if that first drying cylinder or two is too hot, you can get lots of different paper problems. So it's a good idea just to revise that section for a minute. So if the first drying cylinder or two is very much too hot, then the sheet will stick to it like glue and you'll get a wrap up. If it's much too hot, then rather than the whole sheet sticking to the cylinder, individual bits of the sheet will stick to the cylinder. When they stick to the cylinder, you'll get good thermal transfer. The moisture will try to flash off as steam. It can't go through the drying cylinder, so it pushes through the sheet and it stretches the sheet around that point that was stuck, and therefore you get cockle. And if it was a bit too hot, then you get picking out of individual fibres. It can also be caused by basis weight variations. So this is all to do with formation. If you've got your sheet here and you've got flocks, so slightly thicker bits of sheet, then these will contract more and they will expand more, and therefore you'll get cockle. Curl is an interesting subject. It can be caused from the structure of the web, or it can be caused by the treatment of the web, the way that you treat it. If we talk about the structure of the web, then if you have different fibre orientations, top side and bottom side, then they will shrink in different ways. So as an example, if this is the top side of your sheet and all the fibres are random, and that's the Y side of the sheet. On the top side of the sheet, just imagine all the fibres are aligned in the machine direction. What does that mean? That means that if you reduce the moisture content here, when these fibres shrink, they will shrink in all different directions. Here, they will all shrink in just one direction, and so the top side and Y side will shrink in different ways, and therefore the top side and Y side are now different lengths, and so you will get a curly sheet. The fines and filler distribution will also affect the sheet structure. Again, Y side of the sheet, top side of the sheet. On the Y side of the sheet, all the fibres are deposited on the wire, and it's very likely that filler particles will be washed away, so the Y side will be predominantly fibre. The top side of the sheet will catch all the filler particles, and so the top side of the sheet will have a mixture of fibre and filler. If we now try to dry out this sheet, then what's going to happen is the Y side of the sheet will shrink a lot because there's only fibre there. The top side of the sheet will not shrink as much because the filler particles will interfere with all the fibres trying to shrink, and therefore again the top side and the Y side will be different lengths, and therefore you'll get curl in the sheet. Finally, treatment of the web. If you see a sheet going over a roll like that with a very steep, a very sort of small angle like that, that will put a curl into the sheet. Whereas if you go over a roll like that, then you won't put a curl into the sheet. Very sort of simple example. If you imagine making some, buying someone a nice present, getting them a ribbon, how do you make the ribbon pretty? You drag the ribbon over the edge of a pair of scissors, and that puts a curl in the ribbon. It's exactly the same. This is like dragging the sheet over a pair of scissors, and it's putting a curl in the sheet. So, a summary of sheet stability. Fibres very easily expand and contract, therefore the whole sheet will expand and contract. Curl, too sharp a turn over a roll will put an inherent curl in your sheet. And curl could also be caused by fibre orientation, top side versus Y side, or a different fines and filler distribution, top side to Y side. And finally, cockle, usually most often due to drying problems, but can also be formation problems. Thank you for listening to this video, and please feel free to follow us on any of the social media.